Welcome back to the Football Fanatic podcast, episode 73. You're joined by myself, Tomas, or properly known as Mossy on the podcast, and a very joyous, well, he's feeling a bit under the weather, but he's the Liverpool colours out. He's in full celebration mode here. We've Dan, congrats. How does it feel to be Premier League champions after? Now, we will point out that you were at a stag at the weekend. You're not at your
Yeah,
full mode of celebration, but how was that?
yeah, I have a dose of man flu, but it was, I suppose I kind of put it into our WhatsApp that there'd be nothing better now than when you're feeling low and trying to come back to realization of normal life after a 2 day stag bender in the UK to, hopefully Liverpool wrapping up the league, which was great. The scenes were class. Like, in fairness, I think regardless of who you support, like it was some celebration, I think, in comparison, I suppose, to the league title during COVID and that. So it was,
It it
yeah,
kind of felt like it was really the first time. I know they won during COVID,
yeah,
but
yeah.
because of the situation and stuff, they weren't able to celebrate like that. Like it felt like that was all put into to that pre-match Spurs game.
Definitely, yeah. I think definitely. I think I suppose there's a lot of positivity around the club with Salah and Van Dijk as well. Just recently signing on for a couple of years. So there's an awful lot of positivity around the club in general. Like, that was one of the dark clouds that was hanging over, I suppose, as this season. In a relatively negative free campaign, bar maybe the Champions League and FA Cup exit. But besides that, I think, them deals getting signed and then going. And I suppose if you were going to play anybody outside of the bottom three at home to win a league title, you'd probably fancy yourself take. I know they rotated their side, but I thought once we equalised, they were pathetic. Like, even some of the defending and some of the goals, there was a serious lack of commitment, I thought, in Spurs once we even leveled up. But no, it was great, and I get take the point. Like, it was a weird time, and like, even though I don't know what Liverpool's lead, like 19 points that stage. Anyway, like, they kind of it was weird. They kind of the
It was
title
a
was pretty.
formality, but
Yeah,
it
uh,
was Liverpool's league. Everyone kind of knew it. Something similar this season. You kind of felt it was done by kind of that February-ish time,
yeah,
but because you were denied, like they were talking, like you was listening to the players, especially the likes of Van Dijk and Salah and Robertson
mm,
and Becker, Allison, like they were the players, I suppose, who experienced that weird situation where not even their families were fully allowed to celebrate and all
yes,
this kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff. And contrast that with the scenes you had yesterday, it
yeah. It was
felt
class.
really like that was it was a driving force maybe a little bit this year to make sure that they were able
Yeah.
to have that moment and celebrate with the fans.
It's always a bit weird, like, and I suppose I haven't been in this situation too many times, bar the COVID league win. But when you kind of know that it's pretty much you're just waiting for that. I'm sure as a United fan, you must have had a couple of them occasions where it was pretty much done, and you're kind of just waiting for it to be mathematically, to be called champions. But I found that kind of feeling like Liverpool have been in a lot of very close title races that have gone down to the wire, which are usually full of stress. Disappointment. There's a lot of negative feelings associated with some of them close title runs. So it was just weird for it to have been kind of, I suppose, used to their February or into the start of March to look like it was, downturn in form, that they were just a matter of time when they get over the line. And when would it be? And the line it was at home, though, because there would have been a bit of an anticlimax, I think, during the week if it was away, or if they were lads who were, don't know whose house they were in the end, but, like, Palace had got that late winner against Arsenal. I think there would have been a bit of an anticlimax kind of with it. So yeah, it was great. And look, it's been a fantastic season, and I think Arne Slot deserves tremendous credit for in particular improving. And I know, like, of course, Klopp left a really good team, which he did. He there was. I was thinking about this before we come on the pod. Like, there was. Remember that kind of period of time where people were talking for, calling for Klopp's head, that he'd done the most he could do with this team and it needed fresh impetus. And then he went and he got a new midfield, and up until maybe the last, was it month, 6 weeks, he was in a title race last year. So I think he deserves credit for what he did, in particular when you look at McAllister's performances over the course of the season. Like, Klopp bought him and quite small money as well, and the impact he's had. But I think that kind of Klopp 2.0, it would have been interesting if Klopp had stayed on. Would Liverpool have it's all if buts and woulds and shoulds or what. But like, what would it have been like if Klopp had stayed for another year, given the squad and team that he had? But there's no doubt, like what Slot has done in particular. We tried to buy a six in the summer. That was the talk. We really need a six. And what he managed to get out of Gravenberch, he managed to get out of that midfield. And even though I'm not Szoboszlai's biggest fan, I think just as a working functional midfield, that has been Gravenberch. I think has been one of the huge success stories for him. And interesting, I don't be caught what Salah said that he had a chat with Slot at the start of the season about basically allowing him to stay further forward and not have to track back as much as he would have had under Klopp and kind of letting him cheat a bit. And we've seen that this season, like especially in the first half of the season, like he got so many goals on the break. Even his goal yesterday was kind of literally the way the first half of the season was. The goal he got, which was Liverpool on the turnover, giving it to Salah, and usually the first half of the season anyway, he was putting them all away, where it hadn't been the case for the last few weeks. But that was kind of the Salah we've seen for the majority of the season. So I think them tweaks, I suppose maybe the fact that the new voice, and we'll talk about that as well when a new manager comes in, the new voice, and can go maybe a bit stale. Maybe there was a bit of that too in that as well. But there's no doubt that he deserves, I think, as much credit as anyone for getting in there. And even just the way he is, Massey, in like press conferences, the way he holds himself, do you know what I mean? He's just so cool and calm. And I think that what we see in the media, I presume that's probably what he's like to a point behind the scenes as well. That that kind of a calming influence in it as well, because it's he's been fantastic since he came in. I can't really say anything negative at all there's been with him yet. Of course, it's interesting, I suppose, like this kind of when they showed the points tallies. I know Howard, he's not here today, but loves the whole kind of points and looking at, when you look at Liverpool's first 17, the last 17, it's pretty much identical the amount of points that they got, for as much as they've not been as good to watch. The point tallies and the results wouldn't back the argument that they've kind of fallen off, which is, I know the phrase that was used, they've fallen off. They haven't, obviously, because that's what the table will tell you. Performance level, possibly, not possibly, definitely. But not in regards, they've managed to, in games with haven't played well, get over the line in a lot of them too. So that's kind of, I
I do
suppose, my
think, I
take.
suppose, that fall off claim this what I suppose
Mm,
was a little bit of tension. Did feel like there was maybe that little bit of residue of previous, particularly last year, where they were pushed and pushed and pushed and like slipped away at the end. Do you think that that kind of tensing in the game, it wasn't as cool? They still got good results and
yeah,
they
yeah,
got over the line. Like, but if
yeah. I think,
Arsenal had been able to pick up points in those times where Liverpool did draw or etc., it could have been a much closer race. Do you
yeah,
think that maybe that previous reminder or scar of last year might have played a part into what maybe is just about less about performance and more about just getting results near as it got closer and closer to
yeah.
the eventuality?
I, I definitely think if Arsenal were closer, that there would have been more questions asked of Liverpool, and I think we didn't get to see that, but I think there definitely would have been, considering the anticipation as well that Liverpool were going so well, and then that the performances had started to slide I suppose they weren't at the level that they were first half of the season. Salah wasn't scoring like he was. There would have been, of course, there would have been, and taking into account previous seasons where you had the Man City train kind of coming at you as well. So I have no doubt if Arsenal were closer, it would have been interesting to see would they have kind of, I suppose, tightened up, or would they have, pushed on? So, yeah, I think there is an element of that. I do think an interesting one that I've noticed been kind of put out recently in relation to the amount of minutes that Liverpool's players have played, and whether or not that also comes into the kind of reckoning, because where he has managed the squad, he hasn't changed too much, bar injuries, the starting 11 for most games. He's kind of played. It's obvious that he probably doesn't trust a lot of the players that are on his bench, I would think. And there's no doubt that a few of them will be moved on, I think, in the summer. But maybe that's part of it too. The minutes, that are in a lot of the players' legs that have played an awful lot of football. But look, it's all if buts and maybes. At the end of the day, Arsenal had the chances on 3 or 4 occasions where Liverpool had dropped points and they didn't take advantage. And I suppose at the end of the day, when you look at it now and look back, the records will show that the 2 Liverpool title wins are two of in the last 10, the most impressive wins when you actually look at the league tables and the points that they'll probably end up winning the league by, considering there's been so many tightly run races in the last decade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so I
I
just think
suppose
slot for me
do
is the
do you,
is the main.
as well as giving Slot credit, I suppose you do
Mm,
have to give credit to the hierarchy behind him in that by like last August when Slot was beginning a campaign with players who were coming back from tournaments and it was a bit messy and he there was
yeah,
no signings and he was a Dutch manager coming from a kind of a not a very well known place. It's hard to believe how well he has done and defied all expectations because there was very few pundits, etc., predicting that Liverpool would be the champions because we were
I
like
don't think
both
anyone
were in
did.
transition.
I don't
I,
think I seen one. I think
I
I
saw one. I saw Barry Glendenning was the only person
okay.
I came across who predicted Liverpool to win. But I think the hierarchy to have picked Slot, a man who was humble enough to come into another manager's squad, but be able to improve them and to deal with the pressure of following a character like Klopp, who, like, I remember early on in the season, where there was an instance where they were away, I think, and they won, and there was kind of a question as to why he wasn't over, like fist pumping and
Yeah,
whatnot with
yeah.
the crowd. And the way he dealt with that question was like, look, that's not me.
Mm,
I respected that's what Jurgen used to do it, but I hope to develop my relationship by what with his fans by what I we achieve and what we do in the field. And I feel like it's nearly set the scene for what he has done since that he does his talk and he's quite calm, collected, as you said. Does
mm,
care a lot. You saw that passion in that Everton game in particular, the last
yeah,
minute goal and his interaction with the ref and stuff. But like to have managed a squad of like which are very high profile players, big egos, etc., which you wouldn't necessarily have been familiar with,
yeah, yeah.
to the quality of training that they all seem to praise him with, like Curtis Jones in the summer when he was interviewed, is like heaping praise on how amazing basically his training sessions were. To have found nearly a diamond in the rough, essentially by the board, is is something I suppose maybe they mightn't get enough credit for. I think that they were able to
Yeah, I
select
agree.
someone so perfect to take this team and bring it on.
Yeah, like I can't like, and you're right because I suppose a lot of Liverpool fans were quite underwhelmed because there was there was a romantic part of Alonso coming back and he was well odds on for a while with the bookmakers that he was going to get the job. So like when Slot was, I'd heard of him but knew very little about him, and it was only when I watched him in pre-season that I kind of started to look and be like, okay, and I kind of got a feeling that it looks different, similar but like different in ways, but. There was no doubt in from the first handful of games, even in the season, that the players are buying into it, as you said there, with the egos and with the different style. But they definitely have, and I suppose there's been other examples of managers who would have had track records in the Premier League who have gone and taken on big jobs. Likes your maybe Moyes and things like that, where it just really didn't go that way. And like I think a lot of it'd be interesting at the start when we're having a conversation with them of whether or not what was the aim. I would presume it was Champions League. It definitely wasn't the league title. I'm sure that would have been an aim in the project and such. But like you could argue, like, was it the best thing that happened to him that he didn't buy anybody? That the way it worked out, like, that he just had to have a look at what's there. He would have obviously, of course, had an idea what was there before he took the job. But was it just he had this group, as you said, players coming back at different times? Like there was players there that like the Robbo as well, who were injured and missed a full preseason. Um, that as well. So like you wonder, like, did it serve him right in the end as well that there wasn't any other signings that had come in, because that again brings added pressure when you go and spend a chunk of change and then trying to get players to adapt to a new country, new system as well. That he had a pretty much settled side in the sense of that the players were there. There were if going on the back of last season, they were well settled. They were well used to the Premier League. There were maybe, question marks would be Nunes and Gravenbercher probably too. You'd have had a question mark over. I think I don't know whether or not there's anybody that can improve Darren's age. To be honest, I think he looks like he'd be set and sail. I think in the summer, but Gravenberch has been a revelation. Like, and I think him and McAllister, you can see it there in the game on Sunday against Spurs. they were excellent in midfield. So the question is now really is, can we do what we didn't do last time? So when Liverpool won the league in the 1920 season, they didn't really spend money that summer. Sorry, excuse me. They didn't spend money. So there's massive talk anyway coming out from a lot of correspondents that there's this war chest of whatever it is that they're going to spend money and they're not going to do what they did last time, which was not strengthen when you're on top. Man United done it for years when they won league titles. They went out and they bought some of the best players for the following season to go again. So you'd imagine that if the Liverpool haven't spent that much money in the last couple of years, so there should be plenty of money there. And again, it's just about identifying, which they have done in the last number of years, identifying a majority of really good players to come in and to fit into the side system a whole lot. So that's my hope for the summer now, is that they can build on it and it's not just a kind of I suppose a one season wonder kind of a thing, and that they can kind of bring players into, I think, a couple of starters, but also a few players for the bench as well. They can come in.
Yeah, I suppose the last thing in terms of praise, I think you need to give needs to be acknowledged is the fact that he's made so many players better.
Yeah,
The likes of Gravenberch, McAllister's been excellent.
Gakpo.
Gakpo has had a fantastic season and he's been tweaked to
Yeah.
what he'd been used before. Diaz performed very well in that false nine kind of role. And it is a funny situation that as you win the league and you're after getting your new contracts for Salah and Van Dijk, who are such key players, it is a team that is going to need changes, and there is a lot of question marks over players. So it will be a new challenge for him as they head into the summer. Now, look, they have an excellent track record with recruitment. Um, but there are questions, like more than likely, we expect Alexander Ireland to be gone. So do you just trust Conor Bradley with his injury record? Do you trust Robbo for another year with Simicast? Are they good enough?
Yeah.
You're expecting you're probably expecting Nunes to leave. Um, do get cover for that, and probably like the likes of Endo or that kind of thing. You probably need a bit more strength and depth. Harvey Elliott is another question mark, even though like he's Liverpool through and through for his own career. It's kind of looking like he might be better off to leave. Like, where are the kind of key areas you would expect to see change, and
Mm.
do you have any kind of targets? I suppose Kirkes, I know, is one that is high on the list,
Yeah.
that would like to see come in, because it's going to be a new challenge to try and blend what is considered possibly 4 or 5 new players coming into that even starting
Absolutely.
11.
Yeah, I think definitely he's definitely going to buy a right back. Regardless, like, I think whether or not Bradley will start next season or not remains to be seen. But I think he will buy another right back because we need one. There's definitely a few players that will move on, and I think we'll get a few quid for them. I think Kelleher's probably, if you start with goalkeepers, I think Kelleher could be one that would be moved on. I think just the way it's kind of working out now with a new goalkeeper coming in, unless there's something going on behind the scenes in regards to Allison. I'd imagine Keller will move on, and you'll get a fair chunk of change for him because he's been excellent and he's played a fair amount of games in the last years in the Premier League, and he's been very solid. So I think he's one to get a few bob for. Joe Gomez is another one I think a club would pay a bit of money for as well. I know his injury record isn't good, but he can play anywhere across the back line. Whether or not he was looking at moving in the summer and it just didn't happen. They couldn't get, I think, the evaluation from, I think, Newcastle. There was a couple of clubs interested in him. So when you look at it, I think they definitely will buy right back. I think we've moved Simicast on, and I think a left back, which, as I said, I've been talking about it here. I think Kirkhead seems to be the one they've identified, whether they get him or not, because I'm sure the other clubs interested. He's one that they've identified for left back. I think in midfield, it's more. I'd like to see if it's Elliot isn't going to be, if he's not in Slot's plans, you get decent money for him. I do think that I'd like somebody to challenge Bosley, because my one thing that I don't like with him is I think he should have more goals and assists for the position he plays and the attacking areas he gets into. So I would like somebody there to compete for that position. I think Endo is actually, like, he's done a really good job when he's come in this season, but I think we need another midfielder. I know Jones is there as well, but I do think another midfielder would be good. I really like Believe at Brighton. I think
Well, if he
he would be really
continues
good.
to score goals like he did at the weekend, it
I didn't
was
even know he had that in his locker. That was one thing I didn't realize, that he
oh
could do that.
beautiful
But
goal to win 3-2.
But he's a player, a profile of a player that I really like. That he's young, he's very energetic, he's box to box, and he can, I suppose, mold as well. He's far from the finished article, but I don't think Liverpool necessarily need a finished article in midfield. Given on this season anyway, it's more I think players that could come in and compete to start. Yeah, as you said, there's that Salah and Van Dijk is like that's you've 2 years now to try and solve them problems, which they're unsolvable really. Like let's be honest, but they have time to try and identify targets to try and step up to that mantle. Jota is another one. It'd be interesting to see whether or not he'll be there next year as well. I definitely think Liverpool would be in the market for a striker like a lot of other top clubs. And then the question marks are Diaz. He hasn't signed a new deal. He's been offered one. He didn't sign it. Last season, Barcelona tried to buy him, but they couldn't afford him. Man City actually tried to buy him, if you remember, as well. And we're looking at his availability in that as well. And I think they actually bid for him, I think, Man City. So he's one. For me, I'd like Diaz to stay, given his performances this season. But if he's not going to sign a new deal, they don't want to end up in the position that they were in maybe this season with better guys. And Kanate is another one. Kanate as well, if he's not going to sign, if Liverpool want him to sign, he's looking for a lot of money. So that could be another position they may need to try and fill. It is, I think he'll be going into his final year next year. I think if he
Yeah,
doesn't
he'll be
sign a
going
new
into the last 12 months the next
deal,
season.
so yeah,
Yeah.
so
There's a
so
lot of
there
changes
is as
there.
you said,
So
like there is,
it'll make
yeah,
next year
yeah.
an interesting season and a challenge for Slot because the expectations will be raised after such a fantastic first season. It'll be interesting to see okay. But look, we'll give them the due. I feel like I've been a very humble Man United fan here,
You're
biting
not
my
that
tongue,
bad, Marcia. You're
and
not
I
that
give them plenty of praise. So I've done my best, Dan. So we can congratulate Liverpool, and
bad. Thank you.
we'll jump on to an interesting weekend in terms of the FA Cup. Um, I was we've been talking well, I've been talking about the magic of the cup and how it was great to see the non, I suppose, traditional, especially in the last 10 years, I suppose, like the City and United have had a decent record in it, and the big
Liverpool as well. Liverpool have
traditional
been
big
around
six,
it for quite a
Liverpool,
bit. Yeah.
to see newer teams really competing for it in terms of we have our semi-finalists with Forest and Palace and Villa. We're kind of any of those three, most neutrals would be delighted to see.
Mm.
But it wasn't to be for Forest this weekend. Deck was delighted with the 2-0 win.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't for Forest. It was just Forest set up to defend really in the first half and then probably bring on their speed merchants in the second half and try hitting the counter. And they conceded in the first 2 minutes and it just it killed that entire plan instantaneous, really.
Mm.
Now Alanga had a fantastic chance on the break. Callum Hudson-Odoi cross squaring it to him, and he was straight on. He used his exceptional pace to put himself in a great opportunity. The second goal, I don't know. Did you see the Sells save before, which led to the corner?
Didn't know. No, I didn't know.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So he made a double save, a shot on the right hand side. I think it was Marmoush, maybe. He going across to the left hand corner. He palmed it out to the kind of corner of the 6 yard box, where Kovacic was coming in. Kovacic struck it. It hit the defender, put his hands behind his back. It bounced off the ground and hit the defender's hand behind his back. So there was claims for the penalty. And Sells had got up and managed to slide across and clear it with his feet out for a corner.
And he's
And
had
you
a
kind of
cracking
felt
season, mind you, as well, isn't he? Like
he's had a fantastic season for
yeah.
a £5-6 million signing of a goalkeeper. And you kind of felt like, okay, Forest have been saved here. If they can just, you know, that was such a good chance to make 2-0. And from the following corner, Guardiola buried a header, and you kind of felt that was
That's
that
it.
in that case.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
and you kind of have a feeling at this stage now that, like a City are into the final in Wembley. Here we go again. I just thought it was
Yeah.
interesting. I know we go on about fans and we're going about how amazing the Liverpool fans were, but there was a noticeable lack of City fans at this. And I was doing a little research into, I was like, come on, like City have a bigger fan base than that. But
Mm.
it was their 30th time to Wembley in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that might be an influence as to why they mightn't be as
Yeah.
excited to get there for a semi-final against Nottingham Forest.
Do you think the semi should be? I don't know. We talked about this before. Maybe we did, but I always kind of have a feeling that like the final should just be at Wembley. I know it's the money, but like the procedure getting to Wembley should really be for a final. Do you not think? Or what's your opinion on
100%
that?
agree. Even just to
Yeah,
like create atmosphere, there's just doesn't
yeah,
have the
yeah,
same atmosphere. Like you could pick some of the stadiums, maybe a neutral stadium that is in
yeah,
between the two places or something like that, and then I think it's much fairer. But Wembley, unless the likes of that city didn't travel, so it was all Nottingham Forest fans. They were
yeah,
deflated after the first 5 minutes, and although they like it just it faded away, like it faded away from
yeah.
them, and I feel like they're on the cusp. If they don't keep the Champions League spot, it's going to be an awful sour taste for what really is an excellent season. The way they've gone out of the cup
Who's that for Forest?
for
Is it?
Forest, yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Forest.
no, yeah, yeah. Look, they got a great win. It must be said there away at Spurs when the pressure was on, when all the results had gone against them. So if they can pick themselves up now, they've home to Brentford on Thursday again. So they just have to try and dust themselves down now, don't they? And really get back to winning ways. But there's no doubt there. I thought it was an eye catching result in us Spurs are Spurs. I just thought it was an eye catching result considering the results had gone against them to go away and get the job done there against Spurs. So look, yeah, Brentford get that out of the way. Hopefully get 3 points there. I still think they're sitting in a decent spot, but it would be, as you said there, to have been in the Champions League spots all of the season and for to slip away at this stage now would be disappointing for them. And I do think that on the performance level this season, they deserve it. To be honest, I think they've been excellent, and players like Chris Wood and as you said, Langa and Gibbs White, and then the defense. Although it hasn't been as good second half of the season, some of the players that just come in there that for small money they've really recruited well. So
Yeah, their defense, I suppose, are
and
missing
they
are there are injuries there,
yeah.
and you can definitely see how they're missing Ola in at the
Mm,
back. His injury has really been a big blow. But look, it wasn't to be
yeah,
for Forest, but City march on to the final, and I suppose they probably have the favourites tag really against the Crystal Palace team, who put on an excellent performance. It was a
it's a
shocking
huge
week for
result
Villa.
that.
It was a shocking
Mm,
week for Villa. And it was, I suppose, for a player who had such a fantastic season in Yori Tielemans, he got nicked twice with the ball, which led to goals. And Pau Torres got blocked down for them. So Villa were kind of the architect of their own downfall in some regard.
yeah, they were. Yeah.
But Palace were outstanding. It was probably the
Mm,
loudest I've heard Wembley ever. It was just
yeah.
some superb atmosphere with all the Palace fans. And
And Glasner's done
they were,
some job, like when you look
yeah,
at last season when he came in and they were struggling. Hodgson, got the gate and uh, he came in and he was excellent. It's such a really good end to the season last year. This year they started slow. Matete was off at the Olympics. They were missing him, I think, as the vocal point there at the start of the season. And they were quite poor for the opening. I don't know, was it 6 or 8 games anyway? They weren't the races at all. But once they got going, and I feel like they probably were taking the foot off the gas. They took a couple of hidings recently, and they wondered did they just always kind of hold a bit back with this game in mind. There was a lot of rotation going on. They played a lot of
it
games
kind of
recently, but I
reminds
think,
you a little bit of Newcastle before the Carrow Cup final.
yeah,
They were a bit off it in
yeah,
2 or 3 games coming up to it. It was like they reminded themselves, saving themselves, and then they
I
had
think
this
so.
explosive
Yeah,
performance in them.
yeah, it's a huge one. And look, I do think it'll be an interesting final though. If you were to just take let's isolate the opening 30 minutes there a couple of weeks ago when City played Palace. Like Palace should have been 3 up. Now they went and completely capitulated, so that obviously can't happen again. But I do think like that it'll be an interesting game because we still aren't dealing with the City of years gone by. They're still quite fragile, and I think Palace can definitely get at them. So like it's definitely not a penalty kick for Man City, and we had an upset last year in the FA Cup final. So I do think Palace can go there with a decent chance. Mateta. That's it now if they can keep all their main players fit. I think Eze second half of the season has come back to the player he was last year as well. So they've definitely got players that can hurt Man City as well. And I said I'd be, as you said, for the cup the way it's gone this year with Newcastle winning the Carabao. Could Palace go
Win their
and do it?
first cup in their entire club's history.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity. And look, I suppose I'm looking at Glasner and the style he plays is maybe a hope of what we Amrin can create
yeah,
because
yeah.
they do like to create similar styles or do
Mm,
favor the same style and similar formation and stuff. So to see, I suppose, what he's managed to get out of players, and he's got built an excellent squad. Like Wharton was missing the start of the season, and He's a massive part. Like
Baller.
he was
He's a baller. Yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, he won so much possession. He's
Mm,
I suppose exactly what England are looking for in that kind of sixth position. And if he can maintain it, I'd say he will be a central part of England's next World Cup campaign. But
yeah.
um, they were outstanding for man. Like Henderson had a fantastic game. Wharton was brilliant. Eze was fantastic. Sarr was like just so
Yeah.
strong and
When you,
powerful.
yeah, when you think of like when Elise was going, and he was kind of one of their main players when he got told to Munich. There was question marks to whether or not that was going to cause a massive impact. But I think Sarr has done he's done fierce well back in the Premier League. He always showed signs. I thought at Watford that there was a decent player in there. But
Yeah,
it's just a question whether they can keep them. It's interesting that there hasn't maybe been more. Like you look at Munoz season this year. He's a tasty player. You wouldn't mind him at your club, would you? You know what I
I
mean? Like
love him.
he's a
I would
yeah.
love Munoz. The way
So
he
so
gets
you
up and down.
wonder like
Even Tyler Mitchell, the way he gets up and down that wing, like absolutely
yeah.
take any of them.
You think of Gay there, like he was, the one that they tried. Many clubs tried to kind of get him during the summer. So like they've a few there. They've managed to hold on to them for a couple of years. Eze's another one where could you see Eze maybe at a club maybe challenging for Europe? I think so. So
He
it'll be
could,
just
but I think
interesting to see.
if they were to win and beat City
Mm,
and get the Europa League, I think it would help them massively in keeping some of those players.
yeah, fair. Yeah, fair. Yeah.
But look, as a neutral,
Come on,
we're all going
Palace.
to be shouting Palace on, but weight of expectation, we kind of feel that it could ruin it all by City winning it
In,
and it being
yeah.
another.
In fairness to Pep, though, he did come out and say like, even if we win the FA Cup, it's been a horrendous season. He's not like
Yeah,
he wasn't having any of it at all. He pretty much just called a spade and said, regardless, this has been a shambles. They were competing to try and get a Champions League place. He was straight out about it. That it's regardless, the FA Cup won't, as you said, it even turn up on even turn up at Wembley to support them. But it's definitely. I think it's been a poor season all around for them, and as I said, I think Palace can go there with a decent shout. I think I've given them a good run.
right. We'll all be back in Palace from now on. Anyway. Um, it can't be how bad of a season would it be as United fan. If City win the FA Cup and Liverpool win the
Mm.
league and Arsenal going for the Champions League
Spurs win
and
Europa.
we're losing the Europa League final to Spurs. Oh God, don't even think about it. We have to get there first. So Thursdays we get on
Mm.
to the European fixtures, Dan, since we're moving on to that direction. Arsenal are on tonight. PSG,
Mm.
and they're at home. Um,
Yeah.
Personally, I prefer to have the second leg at home, but they did the job against Madrid and they're in the same situation. What do you
Mm.
expect from this game, and particularly watch PSG closely since you've played them yourselves?
Yeah. I
And
just think that you want.
and do you think that a clash, this kind of an element of a clash of styles here, in the both, well, maybe not clash, but there is that well, Pep influence or Cruyff influence maybe coming from both sides and in the man both dugouts. Both want to control the ball, um, but Arteta and Arsenal have that kind of great and defensive side that you wouldn't really associate with PSG. I think that could be the difference. That could make the edge. Or are you leaning towards the creativity and attacking powers of PSG being too much?
It's probably an easy thing to say, but there's a couple of battles I'm really looking forward to. Like when Liverpool played PSG a few weeks ago, like Salah couldn't get any change out of Mendes, so I'm very interested in how Saka will get on against him. I think that's a really big battle. I think that Mendes he looked brilliant. I said I haven't seen an awful lot of him. Well, over them two games, he was exceptional. Nobody agreed with me. I thought he was exceptional. And I think
It
the
was
other young
fantastic, yeah.
lads, the other young lad, Dewey, is it? Dewey running at
Do it,
with
yeah.
Skelly. Dewey, I think that's another one. Not so much. I just the other side. I think that they're two really key battles because it's Skelly has done so well, but I do think he'll be tested because he likes to get forward. And that lad for PSG just looks like he's
He
explosive. He could do
glides with the
damage.
ball, like
Yeah,
it's so hard to get off him. He's strong, he's got great pace.
yeah.
And again, look, there's probably 18 and a 19-year old, but I think it's going to be great. But I think Kvaratskhelia and his positioning, is he going to drift and who's going to follow him in
Mm,
relation to? like Jurgen Timber and him could be another
Yeah,
really key battle there because Timber has been fantastic for Arsenal, particularly in Europe.
and Party's a blow, isn't he? He is like he's a blow to the
Yeah,
way. Like Moreno's sort of reverting back to suppose the position he was bought for. But there's no doubt that Party has been a great servant to Arsenal. There's talk of them now giving him a new deal, I think, as well. I think there's that he might actually stay on now. But that'll be interesting too to see, with Trossard, maybe he's coming back to form at the right time. Some of his performances recently, he's looked like the player that was there last season. But it just had
and
this
Martinelli
feeling,
has been a little bit in the goals, which
yeah,
was something that was been lacking for his game for quite a
lacking
while.
big
He's
time.
been
You have a feeling though, like just Arsenal look so solid defensively. Like in general, like as in they even in games where they're losing, like they don't give up that many chances. Especially, I think I don't know what the stats are, but it felt anyway like they've been a lot more solid. Even like with missing Gabriel, I think he was coming and done well when he's played as well. So you just wonder like that could Arsenal take a slight lead into PS? I think they need a lead. Whether
yeah.
that be a 1-0 or a 2-1. But I just think that they're the kind of side that could go away to PSG and frustrate the life out of them, bring in the dark arts that we know are associated with Arsenal to a point where they are. Like, we know that they can do that too. They can slow the game down and commit little fouls and make it a really frustrating. So I just have this feeling that the more I've thought about it, as much as I still feel PSG will go through and fancy them to win it probably from here, I just have that feeling with Arsenal that wouldn't be out of the rounds they could go there tonight. As you said, they've done it to Madrid. They've looked good at home. That if they went with a lead, they could go and really frustrate the life out of them and defend deep and make it very difficult for PSG in the second leg. So, it'd be interesting. I think Arsenal maybe could go with it could take a lead too. I think they need a lead. If they give it 1-1, or God forbid they were to go in behind in the second leg, I don't think they could claw back, but. I think if they could keep it tight like that, you wouldn't rule them out, I don't think, especially when you see some of the performances like the Rice has been putting in. And Saka, since he came back, has looked unreal. Like, he's made a big difference to them. But it's the tight one to call, isn't it, Boss? I think.
Yeah, it's got to like I suppose we're at a stage, and I suppose it's good like when we got this new format and everything. You were kind of we're like, oh, we'll get to the last four or whatever it'll be. They expected Madrid, cities, that kind of thing, and it's great that it isn't, and we have teams like Arsenal and PSG who are trying to win their first ever Champions League, um, and Inter haven't won it in quite a long, and Barcelona, although the most recent winners, it's not been like they've been kind of outshunned by Madrid in the more recent history. So I suppose I'm delighted in that we're talking about new teams in this situation, and Arsenal and Arteta's, I suppose, record since he took over in Europe has been pretty poor
Hmm.
compared to what they've performed in the Premier League. They've sipped in the Premier League this season, so can they bring that kind of
Yeah.
energy and efficiency in Europe? They've been very good in Europe throughout the whole season, and they're so defensively sound. That's kind of what has me leaning a little bit towards them, that they can sit back and defend. Whereas I think if PSG have a weakness, it's possibly the likes of Donnarumma under a high ball, or potentially their defensive line isn't. Although Marquinhos is a good player, he does have a mistake in him. Um,
Yeah.
Pat, I just Hakimi will be more of an attacking threat. I just there is that potential there. So part of me is
Yeah.
kind of leaning towards Arsenal frustrating them, nicking a goal here and there, and it being a tight two-game affair. And then the other side, I'm like that PSG team get going, they could
Yeah.
blow them away.
And like you have to, like I suppose, look at like I do think not to be kind of going in on Arteta because that would be a fatal move to do now when they're in the Champions League semi-final. I do think that a bit of the spotlight has been taken off from the fact that they're still in the Champions League. I think there'd be a bit more talk around Arteta and Arsenal's failings if they weren't still in the Champions League semi-final. So like it is, I do think that yeah, like it's a big night. It's a big two legs for him, for Arteta as well. But it's just it's hard one. I still think PSG will go through, but I'm the more I've thought about it, the more I think that Arsenal, even though they've slipped off in the league. Again, that match against Palace, it looks like they were holding back. They were flat, like they didn't really put a
Yeah.
whole lot in. I don't think
It
that
kind of
game.
like we've mentioned in terms of Newcastle and in
Yeah,
terms of Palace, that kind of there's one thing in mind, and the league really isn't it anymore. They reckon they're very secure in
mm.
their Champions League. spot.
Mm.
Um, on the other side of it, then the Barca Inter game is tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It's going to be an intriguing clash of styles. Defensive Inzaghi's team, which are one of the oldest average ages, and have
Mm.
had a bad week, in that they lost in the
To Roma,
Roma,
is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
1-0, which Ranieri's done a fantastic job since he took over Roma to steady the ship, bring them all the way back up from bottom half into fighting for top five. But it was a bad loss, and then they previously had lost the semi-final of the Italian Cup, Coppa Italia,
Mm.
to AC Milan. So it's been a kind of for a team that were pushing for a treble. They've now lost race to Napoli at the top, and
Yeah.
they're knocked out of the Italian Cup.
Where
It's kind
where
of
where
not
you look at sorry, where you look at Barca and what they did at the weekend, winning, beat Madrid again.
winning the Copa del
Uh,
Rey, coming
yeah.
back from the eight, being two like to losing in the 88th minute and turn around and managed to snick it in extra time. Like you kind of
Mm.
two teams on very different, I suppose, mindsets and trajectories. Aside from the Champions League, do you see this clash of style being an intriguing, really tactical game, or do you think it could be all out total football where uh, Inter are playing on that kind of high line, trying to get in
I,
behind it every time in the clearance?
I just think from what we watched so far this season, Inter for me are better set up over two legs than Barca, in the sense of like that we've watched Barca have some cricket score lines. I don't see there being an Inter. That's not in the DNA really, is it? Like, do you know what I mean? For that to be a shootout.
Barca
So
feel like they're confident enough that they will outscore you, whereas
yes,
Inter just it's against
yeah,
their DNA.
yeah. I think I probably would. I think it'd be a better final if Barcelona get there in regards to watch. So that maybe would be why I'd be kind of going towards that. Just wondering, is Lewandowski didn't play the weekend? Is he back? No, because he's banged in nearly, I think 30 goals or something this season. Like he's
Yeah.
kind of gone under the radar. I think in
I,
regards how
I,
good he's been again.
yeah.
He
Well,
was
I
out. He
suppose when you
didn't
have the
play.
likes of Lamine Yamal and Rafinha around him having
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
mental seasons, like as well,
yeah,
and like it's just he's kind of been there, done that. He's on the way down, whereas these guys are, particularly Lamal is on the upper
it,
trajectory. He's the next Messi, is the way he's been talked about. But it's
yeah.
interesting. He's definitely out, and Danny Almo is probably back for this, I think. So yeah, Robin is he's still out with hamstring injury. So
Still
it
out,
will
yeah.
be,
He'd be a
yeah,
blow, like, you know, because he's his experience in the Champions League as well, and like he's been banging them in most of the season. But you know what, Barcelona took a bit of a good bit of negative and criticism for their financial problems and bits and pieces in that as well. But there's kind of no doubt anyway that this season, the way it's looking up for them, that as well, like potential treble on the cards. With these financial issues, you look at some of the players that they do have there. I see your man that never got to Man United beyond is back, isn't he, in around the midfield
yeah,
there? Um,
yeah,
Pedri has always looked a player. Anytime you watch him play for Spain or that, like he's another really really good footballer. So there's no doubt that they probably, if you were to look at it, yeah, as you mentioned already, Yamal, the Rafinha, the season he's having, like they have a lot of really good players. As much as they've got their financial issues, but yeah, I'd like to see them. I think I'd like to see Barcelona over the two legs, because I just think it'll be a better final whoever they play. We might
yeah,
PSG Barcelona final to me sounds very enticing. Because
yeah.
that could
That'll
be
be
like a
excellent
four
football.
three job.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know,
you know what? If
yeah,
we expect that, it'll probably be nil all go to penalties, but we'll see.
yeah.
And the other, my attention is on a Thursday night, and
Mm.
we've got Bilbao. Um, I'm not very optimistic, being honest.
Back to
And I
finals in
also,
Bilbao as well.
yeah, but I feel
Mm.
like if we're going to have any chance, we're going to need to at least get a draw in Bilbao. Um,
Yeah,
and there isn't too much to say about it because United are such a basket case. You don't know what you're going to get. Whereas Bilbao have been very consistent with an excellent manager. Some really good players. They're fourth in the Spanish league against 14th in the Premier League. Like they're definitely going to be favourites. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Fingers crossed from my end. I'll have candles lit the whole lot. Any sort of hope that we can get to the Champions League next year, because it'll just give us such more options in terms of changing the team and developing it,
yeah,
and speeding up the transition to players of more of Amarin style.
yeah. It's look. There's no doubt you know, as you said there, I think you need to be getting something uh, from the first leg based on just, I suppose, Bilbao this season. They're fourth, you know, in Spain. Uh, but as I said, and I keep with us that United have just been, you know, do things like this where you don't expect them to get a result, and then they could surprise you. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure. Like there's a lot of pressure, I think, on this two-legged affair for United, given the financial side of that as well. And again, I don't think they've been just, you know, I know we talked in the pod here before about that there was signs of potential with Almiron, that things have improved, and then they kind of just, I think, really kind of fallen off a cliff to a point again. Now again, they've got the Europa now is where all the concentration course is, but you just wouldn't be confident in them that they can go in and put in a performance. They put in random ones here, but you don't expect it, and that could be the case on Thursday night. But Atletico aren't where they are without being consistent over the course of the season, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And yeah, Hoyland got a goal at the weekend, a much, much, much needed one. So will that
Yeah,
spur him on to
we're
do
hoping that
something?
will be. Usually, when you break it up like that, there's one or two
Yes.
to follow it. So
Mm,
that's definitely part of the hope. And look, the only thing I can say for them is that he's definitely developed a bit of a spirit in them. In that they've kept going. The likes of the Leon game, they kept pushing for the Bournemouth game, trying to get back into it, trying to get back to it. And we are limited in what we can do up front. And Bruno had a poor enough game. He came into it, but he was very poor.
yeah.
And when Bruno's poor, United are poor.
Are they good enough, do you think, to be able to go away to Bilbao and to keep it big in and keep it tight?
Mm.
Can they do that? Like given what they, I suppose, have there, like do you think they can do? I know you
Yeah,
must have
I feel
planned.
like
You
they
said
have it
deep
in them. I
and
think they have leaders in Casemiro and I suppose Harry Maguire and
mm,
people like that who can marshal it and they can have that level of concentration if they need it. But they don't do it. They can't. They don't seem to have the ability to do it consistently. Um,
yeah,
and that Europa League has suited them in that it's not as intense as the Premier League, and they've took advantage of it this season. So I'm hoping that
yeah.
maybe that'll stand to them, but it's very hard to be optimistic as a United fan because you just never know what you're going to get, really.
No, and
So
it's a massive two games for Onana as well because you could just see. I think one more if he's not already under serious pressure. I think one more mistake in a high profile game like that, and that could be the final nail in the coffin for him.
yeah,
So it'll be
well, in my opinion, that coffin should have been set down the river 2 years ago. Um, anyway,
yeah.
before I get in trouble for my talking to Nana, I'll jump over to the last kind of the most Spursy thing that I can imagine to do is to
Yeah.
get knocked out to Bode Glimt in the
Mm.
semi-finals
I
of the
see. I
Europa
see
League.
people talking up Oda Glint, and I don't know is that just because
No,
Spurs have just been
Bode Glimt
struggling.
are a very good team. They're
Yeah,
genuinely
yeah.
they've really developed. Andy Mitten is he writes for United as we
Yes,
stand.
I know,
He's
yeah,
a bit of a his knowledge of football is mind blowing. But I listened to an interview with him about 2 or 3 years ago. He went up to Bode Glimt and saw their setup and all the money that had been invested and the developments their youth team and how they'd started to take over in the league, and then they'd
mm,
made Champions League appearances and did all right in it. So like they're a club that are definitely growing and developing. They're not in the most glamorous place in the world, so they kind of have to develop their own talent in terms of they're
yeah.
not attracting a whole
It's huge
crowd.
they got to where they got to. It's huge. Like,
Yeah,
it's huge team have got to this stage, and as you said, like there's massive pressure as there is in United. There's massive pressure on
Spurs.
Spurs. It's particularly given that they'd be expected to go as a Premier League side and to beat these lads comfortably enough over two legs. It's still, they still will be expected to. Um,
They potentially could because
yeah.
Spurs, you don't know what you're going to get either. But
Mm,
I think Bode Glimt are the type of team that could frustrate the life of them and hit Spurs with their high line on the counter and go, steal it like that. But it'll
yeah.
be, yeah, look, if we got to Spurs United final, God only knows what a
It
cricket
would be
score could be.
great. I know, but it would be. I think a Spurs United final versus a Bilbao Glint final is, what I mean. Like it would be great. I think if that ended up being the case and it was a shoe. And I read today about that Spurs seem to have a few financial problems as well in regards cash flow to be able to buy if they don't get into the Champions League. That they'll be under pressure that they'll have to sell before they can buy. In
Okay.
in the summer as well. I read today. Yeah, I was reading that. Oh, where was it? It was on Talksport. there today. They had one of the financial guys that they do have on regularly, and he seems to be quite on the ball most of the time. So, yeah, they were talking about that today. That there doesn't seem to be the projections for Spurs are that they won't be able to if they don't get Champions League football, they won't be able to. Because they're not even going to be. They would have projected to be at least in the Europa League financially. When they would have been doing their accounts and their figures, they're not going to be in Europe at all if they don't win the Europa League. So yeah, the talk was they might have to sell one or two potential assets, and they have a few. They don't have too many though. At the same time, they've a. If you think about Spurs' starting 11 on paper, is there many of them that you'd be rushing in to buy at this present moment?
Kulieski, Van der Ven
Yeah,
is
it was.
probably being potentially looked at by Bayern, and there's a few bits like
Okay.
that. But
Mm.
yeah, um,
Won't be too many
look,
though. Would there? Like,
Ange isn't really going to be there. Um,
yeah. No,
Regardless of
he's.
what happens, I'd be shocked if he's there next year.
Mm.
Um, we'll finish up, Dan. We're
Yeah.
getting tight in time, and we want to see Arsenal. Howard has the crucifix out. He's the holy water. He's every
The
sort of
whole lot.
candle while he's praying to every god there is. So we better make sure we're there to watch him and support him. So the fantasy football, Dan,
Yeah.
and Super
So,
Six. We'll run through them quickly. Whichever you want to start with first.
so yeah, yeah. So we just Super Six. So it was. My brother had another good week as he has for most of the season here, so he's still leading the way. He's a 9 point lead over my other brother. With four, I think there's 4 weeks left to play this. For anyone who's listening, I think there's 4 weeks left. So it's quite tight there. We have €100 cash to the winner. And our games this week, boss, we have Everton Ipswich. I'll take the first one here. So Everton Ipswich have gone for home team. They don't have too many games left to go to, since we've gone for 2-0. Moss, would you like to take Leicester Southampton?
Oh, jeez. I honestly think Southampton are better than Leicester, even though the points don't tally.
Yeah.
Leicester are just awful. They're the worst team I've ever watched in Premier League. They're so bad. They just, yeah, I don't know whether that's on Rude Van Nistelrooy, or is it what's it on? Is it just bad recruitment, or is it a mixture of both? But um, I honestly think Southampton could nick this 1-0, 2-1. So Leicester don't score. Vardy missed a penalty. What about it? It's going to be 1-0.
Southampton needed another result to not get the worst points tally ever.
Yeah, and
But
they were very
yeah,
close to it against Fulham until the 94th minute where
it
Sessegnon
was
got the winner.
classic Southampton. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I'll take Arsenal Bournemouth. So again, a harder. I just think that Arsenal, with the Champions League there, like what sort of side they'd put out. But Bournemouth haven't been pulling up too many threes recently either. So it's a hard one to call. And I've gone for Arsenal. I've gone Arsenal 2-1. But I don't know. I could be nearly changing that. It might depend on what way things go.
Depends how
This
tonight goes, maybe.
hard to know. Yeah, Bournemouth just haven't been. They've kind of fallen off a bit, haven't they? So I've gone
Yeah,
for
they just they've got they've kind of their lack of, I suppose they're not critical enough from the goal. They miss too many chances, and like they
yeah,
create a lot, but they're not taking the chances, and that's really costing them.
yeah. So you can have Brentford United.
Brentford United is who's at home?
Brentford at home.
2-1 to Brentford, I would say.
Okay, you can take the next one as well, then I can take the Liverpool. So the next one then is Brighton at home to Newcastle, which is an interesting game.
Interesting
Mm.
game. Brighton kind of outside the race, but they're still trying to push for European football. Last minute winner was really important against West Ham to keep them in with a shout. If they want any chance, but they're going to have to really go for the win. Whereas Newcastle want that Champions League solidified. So I actually Newcastle away aren't the best. Eddie Howe's back. They've pretty full squad. I probably lean maybe to a 3-2 to Newcastle.
Me too. That'd be a good game. Newcastle, okay, and then Chelsea Liverpool. I don't know how much celebrating or how fit the lads would be for Sunday, but look, the pressure is off, which can always be a good thing too. And Chelsea just haven't been great at all. They could have
They haven't,
given
but
away
they've
that.
kind of pulled away. Like they got the 1-0 win there against
It was a
Everton.
big win, big win.
They
Yeah,
they've got a few important wins in the last couple of weeks. They're trying to just keep themselves in the race.
Yeah, I got 2-1 Liverpool, but again, like the Arsenal one, it's just very hard. This stage of the season, it's always really dodgy in regards motivation. And I think we've seen that even with Spurs at the weekend. They're like, once they went 1-1, the players are like that Spence guy, for example. He gave Salah a few really hard games earlier in the season. Like he nearly just giving up, even for Salah's goal. So yeah, I got 2-1 Liverpool anyway. But like I said, there's a lot more for Chelsea riding back in than there is Liverpool. So um, it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea got some sort of a positive result there either. That's Super Six. And I'll just get fantasy football up here. So it was a massive week for Padraig Clark, escaped from victory, who is top of the fantasy league. He played his free hit and is on 97 points with Chris Wood to play. So looking like he might hit the 100 mark, which is a really good result for your free hit, given that it's not a double game week either. So he's leading the way. My brother Alex is chasing him. He's 7 points off. So it's very tight. He also played his free hit there and had a decent result. And we have Brian O'Sullivan there as well. He was on the same points. He's 7 off it as well. The Poet is still in there with a chance as well. He's 29 points off it. He also plays free hit, and he does have Bueno left to play as well for Brentford. And I'm down here in fifth place. Had a very interesting week. I was on a stag, so I was quite intoxicated to do my changes to my fantasy football at the weekend. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I done this. I made three changes and didn't go back in to check it. I had Salah as my captain before I made the three changes, but for some reason, Cotty ended up being my captain at Wolves. Now, he did keep a clean sheet and he did get 10 points, so it could have been worse. But yeah, not what I would have wanted. So and I had to take a small hit as well with the transfer. So I'm now 50 points off top with two players to play on Thursday night. I have Bueno and Williams, but it'll be I'd be definitely an outsider, I think, with the couple of games are left. And with the sides being quite similar with the players that we have to try and claw that back. So I'd have to take a couple of Hail Mary captain options probably if I want to try and so that one more
Well,
thing as well.
I'm
Howard,
trying to. I'm out of the three of us, me, you, and Howard. I'm bottom of that pile at the minute, so I'm hoping for a few Hail Marys myself, so I don't have to buy you all steak dinners. So
yeah,
hopefully Howard gets keeps being distracted and forgets to do his fantasy football to give me
yeah,
some
Howard
chance of both.
forgot his. Yeah, that was not good, Howard. And you also played your assistant managership, which was Arteta, who didn't have a game. So that really, you've made a balls of that, really. But you still have a bit of a cushion over Moss. But yeah, it's
Only
a bit
about
more
70,
inviting.
75 points there, so I think he's probably doing all right.
Yeah, you might forget again, though, Moss. It's just you might
Never
be
know.
slacking
Yeah,
off.
yeah. I'll be logging in and hacking in and changing his password so he can't get in. But
But that's fantasy football, and there is a jersey for the winner. And as I said, we're into the last couple of game weeks of that now as well. So we want to watch do it ourselves now come the summer with all things finishing up. But that's it. That's football, Moss. Anything else, or are we?
no, we're all good. We have a couple of lads looking at their sizes, getting ready to see what they're going to order for their fantasy football winner. And it's pretty tight in our Super Six fight for €100 continues. But thanks very much for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed the games and congrats again to Liverpool, Premier League champions. And as a depressing United fan after watching Liverpool win the league and it's the City, we get to the FA Cup final. I'm hoping that Thursday can be a shining light of what's been not the best week as a United fan. But congrats to Liverpool, deserving champions. And we'll join you again next week. Thanks for joining us. Follow us, subscribe, etc. YouTube, Spotify, wherever you like to find us. And have a good week.
Take care.
Good luck, Dan.